Ralph is Attorney Bill Tomasco, and we welcome him tonight. And next to him is Tracy Hare, who most recently ran for town council, and unfortunately, she didn't get on the council. But she's a concerned citizen tonight. She's not representing anyone, any organization. She's here as a concerned citizen, just as you. And then to my immediate left is my good friend Don White, for reasons that I don't need to get into tonight. So we're going to begin, and I think the question is for us to start with is, what's the problem? What is going on and why are we here tonight? So I'm looking to see anybody that wants to take that on.
I think it was November that AIM, the company that purchased the old mill site, came to town, the town's infrastructure committee and the economic development committee, and made a verbal proposal about the possibility of reopening the old mill landfill that's across. I'm sure most people know where that is. What they wanted to do was to have the town take ownership during the length of this so-called contract of 10 to 12 years, take ownership. They can't open it without the town's cooperation. The town has to do this. It has been floated that another municipality could come in and do this with them. That's not going to happen. It's going to be Bucksport's issue or nobody's issue. So what they wanted to do is open this landfill up and bring in statewide construction debris, whatever that is. Construction debris is anything that's used in construction. They also wanted to put in something called incidental waste and something called wood waste, and whatever all that means. They wanted to reopen the landfill. The landfill has an existing permit right now, so it can be done, but it has to be done with the town's ownership. So they said, we'll give you ownership for the length of this 10 to 12 years it'll take to fill it up. But if anything goes wrong, we will be liable. They will sign some kind of agreement saying if it's messed up, we'll take liability for this. Again, that's a fairly dubious, in my opinion. I'm only here to speak for myself. That's not going to hold, because if something goes wrong, everybody's liable. They proposed a 10 to 12-year contract, 5 days a week, 6 to 8 large industrial trucks would come through town, go up there, dump the stuff into the existing landfill. The existing landfill is about 48 acres now. It's covered, but there's a part of it that's still open, what is called the North Slope. The existing landfill right now has got serious issues in my opinion. Part of it is not covered. It's open. Part of it, there is a pond. There's a leachate pond up there, which means anything that drains off that underneath it supposedly goes into this pond. What doesn't go to the ground directly. That's millions of so-called gallons. I was up there yesterday. There is a flush coming underground from that leachate pond that goes directly untreated into the river or wherever it goes. Plus the groundwater around that is contaminated as we speak. There are arsenic issues, there are PCB issues that are well documented. That's in the DEP reports. So they wanted to what they said the benefit to the town would be was the town's demolition debris, which if you use the landfill, you know what that is, that you could put the town's demolition debris into there for no cost. They would also give the town an educated guess of around $2 a ton for every ton that was dumped up there. So the estimated profit to the town over the 10 to 12 year contract would be around $3.5 million max. $350,000 a year, perhaps, is a guesstimate of what that means for the town. So that's basically the proposal. There are other. I won't go into the weeds of the fine things, but that's basically it. They want statewide construction debris, incidental waste. Let's go put it in here. Currently, that stuff ends up in Juniper Ridge and other landfills in the state. Other landfills in the state are exhibiting serious problems. Juniper Ridge is a mess. People around that anyway, that's the issue. This landfill right here, that was the mill, has had problems in the past. It's had groundwater issues. They had to buy out a couple of property owners around there. They've had groundwater issues, etc. Right now, the groundwater issues are being monitored. The last one was 2021. There's reports out there that you can get. There are groundwater issues out there. There's arson, as I said earlier. So there's contamination. If we reopen this thing, I think I'm speaking for myself, it seems like a very poor idea relative to the benefits to the town. The town will have liability issues. The town will have all the pollution of significant noise levels, truck traffics, banging. Those things are noisy places. You'll have groundwater issues, and you may have serious odor issues because drywall, when it is put in the ground, can have sulfur stain or whatever it's called. So that's basically what has been proposed. It's a verbal proposal. There is nothing in writing. But the town's infrastructure committee chose to pass it along to the council. So the town manager has asked for a written proposal, has asked for other kinds of things from AIM, none of which has come through yet. AIM at one point has said to the DEP, when the DEP said, why haven't you covered the landfill as you're supposed to? Because they're not in compliance, by the way. The leachate stuff is a mess. They're not in compliance with that, and they're supposed to have it covered. And what they said to the DEP was, when Bucksport takes ownership, we will cover it. The town. So they've already made that assumption at one point in their history. The town shot back to AIM, said, no, we never agreed to that. That's nothing you had. That is misconstrued information. But that is what has been done. This to the town. Okay, so there it is. A lot of trucks, a lot of stuff, opening a landfill, and we'll give you some money. And you take all the rest. So that's basically it. And I don't know, we got anything else going on with this?
No, I agree with you 100%. It's disconcerting that there's only a verbal proposal. It's already gone to the infrastructure committee.
Could you speak up, everybody? Yeah.
Okay. It's disconcerting that there's only a verbal proposal, not a written proposal. It's already gone to infrastructure. But I'd like to speak for a minute about the fact that we won't be held liable. That is a whole harmless indemnity agreement where I say to you, I'm going to do this for you. And if anything goes wrong, I'm going to hold you harmless. I'm going to indemnify you. I'm going to pay you for any damages that you incur. Those are extremely difficult to draft, and they're extremely technical. And that agreement has to say that Bucksport will not be held liable if for any negligent act that the town does. So if some other person does an negligent act, we get sued, we get a judgment against us. Okay, that indemnity agreement may kick in. If it's Bucksport that is negligent, and that is not in the agreement, we can get sued, and there'll be a judgment against us. So that is very, very serious to consider.
And to point out, currently, with the current problems, Bucksport does not have the liability. And so we would be entering a liability situation.
And we're going to get sued. If you own the land, you're going to be sued. You're going to get sued. And you're going to have to retain attorneys. And I'm sure these attorneys they retain say, oh yeah, we'll wait for him to pay us. We'll wait. We don't want to retain him. You don't have to pay us. This is not going to happen. That's not happening. Bucksport's going to have to come up with money. And environmental litigation holds you down. 22 years. 22 years. That could be a superfund site. We don't know. We don't know. It's a terrible thing for Bucksport to take on that liability for $300,000, $350,000 a year. It's peanuts. We don't need it.
Speaking of town taking on liability, when I was in the legislature and I lived in Brooksville, I represented most of the Blue Hill Peninsula, which had 2 commercial metal mines of the past century in my district, one of them in Brooksville. And so I'm aware that the owner of the property in Brooksville that had a metal mine offered to give the property to the town. And the town chose not to take it at zero cost because the town was concerned about the level of liability that it might incur in the future. Now, interestingly, mines are different from landfills, but they have an overlapping concern of contamination of groundwater in particular. So the mine site in Blue Hill, all of the parties entered into a consent decree in the federal district court in which the liabilities were assigned to a liability holding company. But even the wording of those liability holding company had seemingly to relieve all the other mining companies of liability were somewhat restricted. So it was liabilities that were known about. It wasn't, they aren't relieved of liabilities that are unknown. And I bring this up because one of the problems in trying to look ahead in the future is not knowing what kinds of problems there may be. The state right now is reeling under the realization that the forever chemicals known as PFAS chemicals have contaminated areas of the state in unacceptable ways. This type of contamination was not known about a few years ago, so that the liability question is a really serious one, especially when you're dealing with some situation like a mine or a landfill that can contaminate the water, and once the water is contaminated, there's no easy way to decontaminate it. The $50 million that's going into the partial remediation of the mine in Brooksville, not a single penny of that goes to decontaminating the groundwater that's already been contaminated. All the money is going in to reduce the degree of daily contamination. It's every day for the last 45 years contaminating the groundwater, and will continue to. The object is to try and reduce the amount of contamination. Just to give a picture of that history.
With C&D landfill, slightly different than.
Speak up, Teresa.
With a C&D landfill, slightly different than a municipal waste, um, it's legal to discharge it into the Penobscot River. It's legal to leave a C&D landfill uncovered. So I feel, as a person who lives just under a mile, maybe just over a mile away, any of us really, landfills are something that, as we know, you have to care for forever. It's not a 10-year project. It might be a 10-year project for the company that's proposing this. But for Bucksport, it's generational. It doesn't ever go away, and we would be entering into a landfill liability that isn't that doesn't have the same regulation as a municipal landfill. So I think it's really important that we understand what it really means. Right now, the DEP reports indicate that no drinking wells in the area are impacted. However, some of you here were probably part of the very hard work of the ADAPT plan. And those of you who worked on that might remember there was some interest in developing a part of that property. If the landfill is permitted, DEP suggests that development wouldn't be possible because that would be a contaminated site if we were to go forward. So I think as citizens, we should really think about the work we've done with ADAPT and Heart and Soul, the comprehensive plan, and what our future goals were in relation to this proposal. When we had a landfill, we had a paper mill and hundreds of workers in our neighborhood. And it didn't sting as much because our neighbors were working there. It created jobs and benefited our community. And this proposes no benefit to our community, really, because I'm not an environmentalist, but when I caught wind of this, I researched, and I didn't find a single landfill not in litigation. And so I think the cost would be zero once you start to weigh up the cost in litigation. And the other very important thing, and then I'll stop, the estimate of 8 trucks an hour may be the case for a 1.1 million cubic feet landfill, which is what they're proposing. But Juniper Ridge is in trouble. If Bucksport is host to a landfill that's hopping, and Juniper Ridge closes, you're a business person, where are you going to send your trash once Juniper Ridge shuts their doors? And Juniper Ridge, when it was open to out-of-state, that loophole has been closed. But Juniper Ridge was estimating, I think it was about 16 trucks an hour just from out-of-state. I don't have any data on what it's, now that loophole's closed and it hasn't really been tested yet in court. So it would only be in-state waste, but I think the estimate of 8 trucks an hour is an underestimate. And it really contradicts all the vision of all the downtown planning and all the Heart and Soul work, the ADAPT plan, the comprehensive plan, and all the things we've all put in the game. And our town knows this. I think town council is doing their due diligence. They have to scrutinize every proposal that comes to their table, and I think as citizens, we should hear their call. They like to govern with input, and the mayor has said that many times. And so I think it's helpful for us to give our input so the town council and the town manager can move forward with our thoughts on the process. But I wanted to share my personal thoughts. I'm worried about this.
I'd like to jump in for a minute, if I may. Don, you mentioned that the infrastructure committee, can you explain to us who are not like following town council procedures, what does that mean for us?
It's made up of 3 town council members who met by Zoom with AIM for this verbal proposal. So it's a subcommittee of the council. And they were the ones who received the proposal and decided to pass it along to the full council.
And pass it along means they recommend it?
They did not recommend, they just said it's worthy of council perusal. It's worthy of being brought up to the full council.
So,
Whether that's approval or not, that's,
okay.
those are, yeah.
So,
Who those members are? Can you tell us who those three members are?
Of the infrastructure committee, Mark Eastman, Ed Rankin, and Paul Bissonnette are the three council members on that committee. It has also gone before a mostly citizens committee of an economic development committee. Mr. Russell, Ron Russell, our representative, is a member of that committee. He's here tonight, which also moved that and said it was made no decision, but said here it is. Folks, this is common sense. This is basically common sense. It may meet somebody's needs, statewide need, because the argument is, what the hell else do we do with this stuff? Excuse my French. That's the only reasonable argument. But if we as a town say, we're just going to go along with business as usual, we're going to dig a hole in the ground and say, welcome to all this stuff, it makes no sense. It is now time to say no to this kind of business as usual. We force technology to change. We force people to use less. We force people to take another way to deal with this kind of stuff. You dig a hole in the ground, you throw it in there, and you run away. You expect no problems. They all have problems. Talk to people at Juniper Ridge. Talk to people at Hamden who no longer have homes. This causes serious trauma. This will indeed cause continued trauma here. Where does groundwater go? Tell me. Here you have a hill full of junk. You have groundwater down here, and you have a river down here. Where does this stuff go? There are arsenic issues in many of your wells, and I have a filter on my well right now. I'm not saying it comes from there, but there are, right now the monitoring shows that this arsenic is moving uphill and downhill in the groundwater monitoring wells. And that's not to get, that's public information. This is a common sense issue. Are we going to say yes? We'll just go along with business as usual. We'll become the state's dumping ground when Juniper Ridge or somebody else has to close. My opinion is no. My opinion is no, and we say absolutely no now as citizens.
That's right, I think we have to say no now.
Right.
But we have to go now to the town council to sue Lassard and stop it. Let's not let the process start environmental studies. It's a bad situation. There's recently a DEP email that Sue shared with Dawn, and there's concerns regarding monitoring problems. They have exceeded their permit on dumping in the last few years. There's problems. There's problems there now. AIM has problems now that the DEP is looking into as they start this process. So they're just starting to find these problems. This leachate, this is not treated water. This is not going through a wastewater treatment. This is going right in the Penobscot River. It used to be treated. Right, but now.
I want to, I'm sorry. I just want to finish a point I was starting with. So we got the names of the infrastructure committee, and it's going to council. And
They're all quite aware of this issue. They're all quite aware of this issue, and the council will be, Susan Lessard will be addressing the DEP monitoring issues in some of the correspondence, which is not very favorable, okay? And that will happen this Thursday. And the public will have an opportunity in the public spot to say something if they so choose. I plan to be there. I don't know how it will go or whatever, but I think at this point, the citizens of the town need to take some ownership of their town, not just leave it to the council and to the town manager. Because who knows when these things get moving. You know, AIM can change their proposal, they can do whatever they want. but there's no amount of money that is going to ameliorate what is possibly happening there now. This will be, in my opinion, will be a major source of pollution, a major source of disruption to the local people that live anywhere around there, and major impacts on groundwater issues. And already rushing into the Penobscot River. Go up there and listen. It's like a brook going in there right now.
I just,
And so, I've been active for a long time, and I follow all these, but Juniper Ridge leachate gets piped, gets trucked. It was initially trucked to the Old Town sewage treatment plant. They couldn't handle it. All they do is monitor 5 chemicals. There's over 100 chemicals that are coming out of Juniper Ridge. So then they moved into Brewer, which is a much bigger facility, so they can handle the leachate. Brewer couldn't handle the leachate. Currently, the leachate is going to Nine Dragons paper mill in Old Town and going right into the river. So what people aren't necessarily doing is connecting the dots. One of the big economic activities in Bucksport is the proposed salmon site, a salmon farm. They're going to be taking water out of the river. You can't monitor for PFAS. So now you're going to sell salmon that are PFAS contaminated. You're jeopardizing that whole enterprise because they already have a mercury issue. There's methyl mercury in the bag. Now what are you going to do if you have a feed, and you're going to have it. There's no control of it. There's no stopping it. So we can't just start with this. We've got to kind of look at the history going back to all the pollutants that have gone into the river and all the stuff we've fought for years to clean this up and this up, and this is just another thing we've got to fight. And we can stop this right now. We have to.
I'm going to go back to our guests. I've said plenty, but I just wanted it clear. This was an open, transparent meeting.
Oh, I just had a question for panelists.
Yep.
Just a detail here. I've got more to say on this issue. I think it's evolving more and more into an issue of what we're going to do with the mess that's there. I feel fairly confident that we, and I've heard rumblings all around, are going to be able to stop having AIM add to this mess up here. But what we're going to do about it is a real question. But I had a deeper question about what actually, and I know I've heard Ralph and Tracy talk a little bit about this, what actually constitutes the demolition material that's going to come in. I know Ralph can say something about the chemical composition of it. Tracy knows, and both know something about a new law in the state that presumably is going to keep it. So far, we're getting out-of-state trash in here, coming into Maine. I mean, I understand from Ralph that it's once a state business in terms of the trash that's expected to come in.
Well, the legislature, it's closed until February, am I correct? It used to be, the gist of it is other states have much stricter waste laws than Maine. So we were kind of that easy loophole. And what happened with this loophole, out-of-state trash from New Hampshire could come and fill up our landfill. And it's filled Juniper Ridge up 60% faster than they expected. That loophole was, it's been fought in the legislature, and I don't know the name of the bill, but you could track it down, I think, fairly easily if you want to check out that bill. But the loophole was closed, and it's supposedly been signed into law January or February, but it's never been tested in court. I'm not sure if that answers your question. So out-of-state trash wouldn't technically be allowed in a C&D landfill in Maine any longer. But it's never been tested in court, and the question is, my Whirlpool washer is made in China. I don't know if they would know if it came from New Hampshire or not. What's the system for monitoring? I suppose a washer wouldn't be C&D waste, but construction and demolition debris, the things that you can't put in municipal waste for a reason. There's no system really to know.
There is no monitoring system.
No.
Folks,
Was that your question, Hans?
Pretty much that, and also the composition of this stuff.
the construction debris is defined in state statute as anything that's used in construction.
Or demolition. Demolition's the worst.
If you knock down a building like this, this is construction debris. Whether it has couches in it, whether it has this, which are full of whatever. Who is gonna monitor this? I mean, when you go to our dump, do we monitor what goes into so-called recyclable stuff once in a great while? Is the answer if somebody was using. These things are not monitored very well. People, whatever goes in there, goes in there. And that's how it goes at this point.
You think about that. It's not monitored, so those old tiles that are going in have asbestos. Those old pipes are full of lead. Who knows what PFAS chemicals, or who knows what if it's a facility that was torn down to store chemicals or oil that leaked and they're tearing up the floorboards. Who knows what's in that stuff?
Yeah.
Who knows what's in that stuff? We don't know. So it's not like you're putting in Moosehead maple from up in Dover, and that's it. I mean, you don't know what's going to go in there, and there's going to be bad stuff in there. There's no question about it. It's just a bad idea.
Ralph is trying to say something.
Sure, to answer Hans's question about the chemical makeup of the waste, it is, as others have said, a wide variety of things. That's why it's important that the leachate be analyzed for what is coming out of the landfill and going into the river, into the groundwater. As for the legislature's attempts to control the influx of out-of-state waste, they tried for many years to solve that problem. The difficulty is that the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution doesn't allow business activities to discriminate against things from one place to another place. And so the ability of the legislature to keep out-of-state waste from coming into Maine was hampered by that. Now, the legislation that was just passed and takes effect next month attempts to close that loophole by a definitional mechanism, and it seems to me that it's very likely that as soon as someone is not allowed to bring the waste that they have been bringing to the Juniper Ridge landfill, as soon as they're prevented from doing that and therefore suffer damage, they will be able to sue to say that the law that the legislature just passed is not constitutional. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to understand these things in detail, and I know enough not to try to predict what a court will say at the end of the day. But it seems to me the question the court will have to decide is, did the legislature manufacture a law in order to circumvent the constitutional clause, or did they construct the law in a legitimate fashion to do a legitimate thing that does not violate the Constitution? That will be a question, and I expect that it will come up.
So I would like to now give an opportunity. We've heard our guests up front. And I'm going to ask that you stand up and, speak as loudly as you can. We have hearing impaired people here, and we are also trying to get this on Facebook. So anyone with a question or a comment?
I just have a quick one.
Sure.
I am concerned they're not monitoring it. And if they do, how good of a job are they going to do? I mean, are they going to get some local guy with a bulldozer that's going to start moving it around? Does he know what he's doing, or where is he going to put it? And is he going to be overseen by somebody that does know the proper way to just move it from one place to another? I mean, doesn't seem any accountability at all, and it's such a serious matter. I cannot. It's terrifying.
Folks, assuming that people are going to do what they say they're going to do on paper is a reach for me. Right now, that landfill is not in compliance. When they said they were gonna put so much of the mill debris in there, they were permitted to put, I think, 14 million tons in there. Right now, 19 million tons have been put in there, and there's no accountability. There's not, it happens. So believing people to follow through on what they say, I think, is a somewhat naive approach to things. You have to be aware of yourselves. You have to take charge of yourselves. What their permit says what they do is just what they do. They're not in compliance. DEP's, I read the stuff, they're not in compliance, but yet it goes on. So all landfills have issues. No new landfills in the state of Maine are legal. You cannot do it. So they're just looking around for a place to open up a new place, open up an existing facility and dump some stuff in there. That's what's going on. You can't open up a new thing.
I'm looking for the next question. Please stand, speak loudly and clearly. Comment or question. Comments are welcome.
I know we're all here tonight to talk about Fox Board. That's our main concern because we are here and that's where we live. Somebody, one of you, I think, said something about other states have stricter laws about their trash. I'd like to know more about that, what those laws are like, and why don't we? I mean, and another comment, this is not really unrelated, is, you know, it's interesting to me that the natives have been suffering forever around the Juniper Ridge and all that. And aren't we the only state in the union that doesn't allow them to have full legal rights of things? I don't know if you can maybe answer that well, but you know, I've read that. And so now that the so-called ship has hit the fan, to use your French, you know, it's us, it's hitting us. And it's a good thing because hopefully we're going to get something done. But so I would be interested to know what other states do. I would also be interested to know to back in from the other end, because it's one thing to have all the trash to worry about. It's another to stop trash to start with. Why is there so much trash? What kind of consuming society are we that we can trash Mother Earth, you know? So I would think that legislation should also be going on to have strict laws about what gets torn down and what kind of building materials are used to start with. So that's a lot. It's like a speech.
Thank you. Michelle?
So is the only thing that stands between us and the approval of this landfill, the votes of our city council members?
Okay, but there will be a state component.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure the DEP has got to move on this also. But the way, it needs council approval. That's our local, that's for the town of Bucksport's control. That's in our control. If it goes to a state level, who knows what happens?
Right.
Who knows how decisions get made once it goes upstairs?
But they cannot do it without the
That's
approval of the
correct.
council.
They cannot-
So that's our
they cannot
first
do it
line of
without-
defense.
Bucksport needs to take ownership of that
Okay.
thing, understand, for that to be open. Yeah.
In Maine, in order to operate a landfill, you have to partner with a municipality
Okay.
or state.
And
Right
that would be
now, the
just
council
our-
doesn't have a proposal to even discern. They haven't received the proposal, which was, I think, town manager requested that in November, and so they haven't seen that proposal.
Well, there may be a proposal, but the point is you want to stop this mess before it even gets further. And it would seem to me prudent and important that citizens speak up now and tell the council now. Don't, wait until we're in the middle of this mess. Ann McCann.
I've always objected to the truck traffic through town, and any increase in it would be just unacceptable. We already have too much.
And to that point, there was just a meeting with the study committee. What was that study committee, Don, about the Main Street and
Oh,
that they had,
visibility
the
study.
visibility study. And that's one of the concerns is, truck traffic through Main Street and making Main Street better so people can cross. We have an elderly population that they can cross the streets.
We don't need it.
Yeah, and so that is part of the economic development. And we haven't really talked about economic development, because what's the economic development plus of that? Nothing.
No.
There's no job, as Trace said, no jobs, no spin-off jobs, you don't support a major industry. We become a landfill town.
Mhm.
The
Right.
perspective is we are a landfill town. We're trying to get, I don't have stigma of being a mill town, but some people did not, that wanted to move here, thought it was a stigma about being in mill town. We've got, the mill is no longer there, so we're gonna substitute a landfill for
A dump.
a dump.
It'll be a
A
dump
dump,
town.
yeah.
Didn't-
A dump, and so the perspective is going to be, and so from an economic development point of view, people aren't gonna wanna move in, businesses aren't gonna wanna start. People aren't gonna, we're trying to bring Main Street back.
Right.
It's not gonna be brought back.
Wasn't the comprehensive plan, or I think it was, that said that the goal was to bring 3 new families a year into living in Bucksport? Who in the world wants to move their family and their kids? And this is what we're known for. And Main Street Bucksport has an office here in Brown Hall. And Derek is here, the interim executive director, and he's working hard to do stuff to revitalize. But if you have all these trucks going through and, dumping stuff, who wants to move here? I mean, we're trying to make this a place where people want to live and live with dignity and whatever. I don't know, Derek, if you want to jump in on that at all.
There's a guy in the back who's had his hand up.
I'm sorry. Who had? I apologize. I didn't see it.
Quite all right.
Speak up.
I'm retired, I've got plenty of time. Basically, what I have to say is, what's already been said, maybe adding a couple of things more. The big thing is that I see is that we're not going to be able to monitor what goes in there. They're gonna come in here in big trucks, who knows what's underneath all the stuff that's showing on top. And when they dump it, the same thing that happens up here in our own transfer station, oh, you made a mistake. What do we do about it? Now just leave it there. That's what it's gonna be. Who knows what's already there? This has already been mentioned. The mill, the paper mill, was giving so much tax money to this town that the council back in those days probably just turned a blind eye to what was going in. Who knows what's there? But it's leaching, you can bet, today, and it will be for the next 1,000 years, most likely. So what these people are, and how are we going to monitor the trucks? We're going to look at the license plate. Oh, I rented this, but I'm from Florida. We can't monitor what's going in there. It's an impossibility. We can't monitor what we're doing right now. So I think it's a big, big mistake to open up another dump, because that's essentially what it's going to be, a dump.
Thank you.
One, let's talk about that.
Thank you. Who's next? Derek.
You called me out. I don't think I need to even speak to that question. I think we all know what the answer is. And I'm not here as Main Street Bucksport, I'm here as Derek. I live on Elm Street. I have 2 children. I have a camp on our pond that my family owns. I live here. I love it. I'm not going anywhere, hopefully. And I actually have some questions, and I know that no one here truly has all the answers. You guys are our experts tonight, but you also are not employees of the town. So if you could help me clear some things up, that would be great, and that can lead to more conversation. If it is in fact factual, that'd be great. Does anyone here know who is in control or has the water rights for our drinking water in the town of Bucksport? AIM. And who is the company that wants to put a landfill in our town? Oh, AIM. Do we, and I'm not starting any rumors, this is literally a question that we can think of, that we can can answer, I don't care, whatever everyone wants to do, it's your right. Do we worry about that? That if we do not play nice with AIM, that we may have a bigger problem on our hands? Second question would be, let's take water out of the situation, the water rights completely out of it, and just talk about the current monitoring system of the water. We're all here as concerned citizens. Ever since, I think Ralph mentioned PFAS, ever since that became the hot topic in Maine, I've been wondering if our water has been tested for PFAS and why we're not talking about it. Maybe I missed that conversation. And if it hasn't been tested, can we just scoop up some water and send it off as concerned citizens to a lab?
I don't have the answer in facts, Eric, but I believe it's being tested, and I believe we're within okay limits, but I will check in with town manager because it is monitored for PFAS. To put that into perspective, I know of a person or an organization that put in a well, a PFAS treatment because PFAS was in their well, and it was pretty cheap. It was $14,000. So those PFAS systems are pretty expensive. But I went under the impression that our drinking water is tested, and I think you should follow up with Sue because I think it's, well, I've been told it's good. I mean, it's okay. Whether or not the state's parameters of what's okay is bigger than Bucksport, it's just the same as there's potential for more PFAS contamination just by the nature of the fill. You know, it's likely to bring more PFAS contaminated stuff, but right now it's.
Don, you had your hand up.
Well, I believe, and I could be wrong, that the current state standards is somewhere around 20 for PFAS acceptability. I believe what I've heard once is that the Bucksport water is currently testing at 18, which is under that so-called limit. Okay, that's what I have heard at this point, and it's possibly I could be wrong, but I did hear that, and it came from a town source. Yes.
Now, is that water from the lake or water from our
Water,
faucets?
what we drink.
Our drinking water. Yeah, and that is monitored. Yeah, and there are two different things, and that's monitored by a woman named Mary Jane Dillingham at the water company, and she's involved now in the efforts to monitor the water itself in the lake for invasive species and other problems in there. I don't know who is monitoring the water that's in the lake.
Right. She was a guest here a few
Yeah.
programs back. Next comment or
I got one. I was a former employee of the Bucksport Mill. I'd be more concerned with the 75 plus years of whatever the mill put in there, as opposed to what we're going to put in from here on out. There's been some nasty stuff go through that mill, and what you guys are probably all aware of it. It's not, you know, there's stuff coming out now, like Don said. He went out and looked at we used to treat that in that treatment plant in the mill. They treated all 19 million gallons a day. So that was all treated water, you know, everything and because the landfill, the majority of it is unlined. It's got a cap over it, but it doesn't have a liner underneath it. So it's not up to state standards by far, probably not up to federal standards, as I know.
right? Catherine?
How many acres does the landfill take up now?
I believe it's 48.
The landfill is 48.
That's Ralph.
The property is a 109-acre lot from the tax map, but I don't know.
There is room, understand, contracts also can be renegotiated.
Right.
So at the end of this so-called 10 to 12 year thing, if there's still room in the 109 acre total to do that, contracts do get renegotiated Ask the good people up that live in Old Town near the Juniper Ridge landfill. They have gone through this and gone through this. So you get to the end of the so-called contract, oh, we still need places to throw this trash. Let's renegotiate the contract. We'll even give you more money, that kind of stuff. So understand, while they're saying the current proposal is for 10 to 12 years, understand that is only for this particular contract, but contracts do get renegotiated.
Any contract you
Of course.
Michelle?
And could they include that to take more land by eminent domain? If in fact they were in a contract.
The current proposal, reported by the news, not by Ames,
Right.
was 1.1 million cubic,
Speak up.
was 1.1 million cubic yards. I don't know what its current status is, and I'm not sure if you might have some insight on that, but it's not a massive landfill, but it's not a small landfill either. I don't know how that translates into how many acres though.
Right.
That's just a big call. That's a lot of debris. If you figure 12 years of filling it out, that's a pretty decent size. That's a lot of backup. For those who live at the town sites, Bill lived near the mill when he was younger, and
Right, I grew up in the town site, but Debbie and I bought a house on Scotts Lane, which is, if you go out to Silver Lake, Scotts Lane, Evergreen Drive. Just the mill they were taking bark, wood product, but they were taking ash, they burned ash, and they were dumping that ash. When they would dump that ash, those tailgates would bang, 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 it's like a gunshot going off in your backyard. We formed a group together and tried to get that to stop. We were ignored at first, and then they were trying to remediate it. And there was, with the ash, and this could happen with sheetrock or any type of dust from construction debris, that's extremely windy up there. They had an ash blow that went over Drake's Lane. And so that's also another issue. Is what's going to be airborne, not just into the other neighborhoods. And you talk about the size of the place now. There's always people that live near one. They don't want to sell. Don't want to sell. It's going to just hurt the property values clearly here. I grew up next in the downside. We played up in the landfills, get kicked out by the people that had the trucks. The truckers would
They would say that they would only bring in the trucks at certain times of the day, after 9 o'clock.
Oh, they did.
But 9 to 3, they'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning and after that. And also the ash, I would have it on my windows and I would wash my windows. You could see it.
Yeah.
So it's in your
That
lives.
was on
So
Scotts.
it's getting in your lives.
Evergreen's even closer, parallels the
So,
place.
I live in the opposite direction of town side.
Right.
And I grew up playing on the dock, the bark dock. But I could hear the truck bodies slam
it's annoying.
too, at all hours of the day.
Well, I'll tell a real quick story about the water up there. 8th grade, so I'm 65. I was in 8th grade. Glenn Webb was our teacher. Glenn Webb had us go and get water samples from where we lived. I got the water that was flowing out of the bark pipe. I took it into Glenn Webb. He said, Bill, I don't know where you got this, but don't go back there.
Don't play
Grade, I
that.
was what? Well, that was 53 years ago.
I'm watching the clock, and I want to give anyone an opportunity who has not spoken. I see your hand. I'll come to you in a moment. And then I would like our guests or anyone else that wants to respond to, we talked about the seriousness of it, but the question I'd like to end with is, now what? Now what? What are we going to do? Okay, it's enough to, I see it, and I'll be right with you. It's enough to explain it, and if you don't have a copy of Bill's report, it's next to the candy over there. So, I thought if we put candy there, everybody would, pick one up. But if you didn't get a copy of Bill's report,
It's Ralph, I want to.
well, what did I say? Well, I don't know who Bill is. Ralph, get a copy of Ralph's, who is Bill? Get a copy of Ralph's report, okay? It's very, very, the title is Bucksport Landfill, and it's an updated version. Okay,
It's very
ma'am.
quick, because I don't know a lot of politics in Maine. I'm from Indiana, which is bad enough, but, can they decide this right out under our feet, or can you force a vote from the town?
Well, the council would have to bring it to a vote if they so choose. The council themselves can stop this. The council can say, by a vote of 4-3 against, can say, no, we don't want to
Or
do
seven
this.
and nothing.
Without,
So what if they try to do it, can't we force a town vote?
well, you can go ask, you can go and petition for that to happen, yes. You can. When I was involved in a major environmental issue in this area in 1989 through 1992, there was a monster coal plant that wanted to build up here. We did force a town vote, but what we did was we gathered, 1,700 people on a petition and said, we want to vote on this thing. The town voted against it, and that began a wave of popular opinion against this thing that eventually ended up going away with a lot of work with my colleague Carolyn, who was back there.
A lot of work and a lot of expense.
A lot of expense and all kinds of stuff that went on. So this is another one. But I think if the council themselves at this point have an opportunity to say no, and I would suggest that I have all the numbers of the council right here on this little yellow thing. I've tried to. You can take it and call them. They have to listen to citizens, or you can go to the meetings, etc. But you could force a town vote by petitioning them. Yes.
There was someone in the back, way at back. And please speak up.
Yeah, my big concern is living in town, I would be scared to death about the water quality for drinking water. The landfill where they're putting it is so close to Silver Lake, which is our water supply. It seems like a no-brainer that it's gonna leach in, and all these towns out west that they can't drink their water, and their kids in school are drinking bottled water. It seems like a no-brainer that this is a big issue.
Right. Thank you.
Can I add to that? Just one second.
I'm going to take this gentleman because he hasn't spoken yet.
He lives on the lake.
I don't know all the things I would say, but I'm definitely against this. I live on Silver Lake Road. I'm about 2 miles out, just by boat. And I haven't looked at the geography that much, but as far as I can tell, I'm basically just on the other side of the hill from this thing. And that's disturbed me. I got really high arsenic levels in my water, and I had to put in a treatment system. The person that we bought our mobile home from, as I understand it, I don't know for sure, but as I understand it, there were 2 people living there, and one of them died of cancer. Okay, my next door neighbor died of cancer. My wife died of cancer, and I've had 2 dogs die of cancer. Well, we can say radon in the water. We can say any number of things. We can just say biology. We can say happenstance, whatever. But I'm really curious, and especially now that you're bringing up things about the landfill that I didn't know about, that it's not covered, that there's all this leachate, so forth and so on. And you get in there and you start working with this and you start disturbing things. There are things that the mill put in there years ago. I've heard stories about 50-gallon drums, and people didn't even know what was inside those drums. They were just tossed in there just to get rid of, and all that kind of thing, when people weren't really monitoring these things and just, sweeping underneath the rug, just buried in the dirt there a little bit. And this is just a really bad idea in every aspect. And we don't want to become dump sport. We want to be buck sport. We want to have an economic thing going on, and we want to have people coming to our town and liking to come to our town, not to be saying.
Right.
There's so much I can say on this. I think it's a really bad idea.
It is.
Now you're making me really want to get my water tested.
Yeah.
You know?
So in the very back on my, yeah, go, yeah.
Yeah, I live out on Town Park Road where I've lived for about 20 years. And I monitor my water. I do a water skip every 5 years and whatever they recommend every year in between. And I've seen the arsenic level creep up, and had to put in, a couple of years ago, put in an arsenic filter.
Right.
So I too am very concerned about water quality. And I think if you think about horizontal distance versus hills, because the leaching can occur, we don't know where the fractures go in the bedrock. So that's number one. Two, truck noise and pollution from the truck, but noise carries. When the mill used to be here, I could hear the logs being dropped, even though I'm over a couple ridges. So I think noise will be a huge factor, and air pollution, and property values will plummet. I do not see people wanting to come to Bucksport if they know that is there.
Right.
And I feel like there are some young, vibrant people who maybe for example, rent a place to a young couple who have just bought a house here and they're horrified. They're like, oh my God, we just bought a house, a property that we're going to fix up. We're going to raise our family in Bucksport, and now there's this proposal. And so I think we should really be thinking about how do we do that plan that we were looking at, how do we attract people, and it's not by this. This would be the exact opposite direction. And the salmon farm would stop that. I mean, it's a choice, and we have to stand up and we have to say no.
Right. Johanna?
I was just wondering if we happen to know any of the general opinions of those on council that seem to be responsible for this decision.
What's that?
Any idea what the councilmen and women already think?
They're not here.
You do know. Some people do know.
So,
Stephen, can I respond to that?
yeah, good. All right, this is the last one, and then we're gonna take the question, where do we go from here? Hans?
I just wanted to point out one thing, and this will be the last thing I'll say here. My understanding of the council, and I talked to a particular member today, is everybody, the way things are transitioning right now, there are a lot of information coming out as we speak, and the councilors are pretty outraged. I think Don will probably support that. I don't think that's going to be our biggest concern. I think if we all raise our voices, as everybody has suggested, we need to do that, yes, keep that pressure on. But I think the question is going to be, once this is, the future of this dump is settled, what are we going to do with the mess that's there now? It's just a
Right.
Nobody in the town is aware of these latest reports. It has not been monitored. There's freaking poison going into our water supply here. And what are we going to do about that? I think is going to be a big question now.
So,
First moved to my property in Silver Lake, there was no arsenic in the water, that was 1998, and just routine water tests, might be a little hard, that's it. Okay, and now, 5 or 6 years ago, we're up to 16, and I don't know what it is currently, but now I have a monitoring system, it's not showing up like that. But the point is, it's going up. And then you start disturbing the site and adding things, and then it combines with all the other chemicals that are in there, and who knows what the heck you're going to end up with, and what chemical reactions and so forth. I'm done. Sorry.
right.
Maybe I'm not done, but-
So the question now becomes, we've heard this information, you got printed information, we've had knowledgeable people up front here, as well as knowledgeable people in the audience. It's been very productive in terms of a conversation. My question is, what do we do now? Open that up. Anyone? Bill, Ralph, Tracy?
It's not on the agenda yet. It's not on the agenda yet because we don't have a proposal yet from any. And the council's open to hearing from us. So talk to them, reach out to Sue, get some information, have a conversation with them. They care what we think. They want to hear from you. And so I think, At this stage, where we don't have the proposal, I think it's important to get out ahead of it and let them know right out of the gate what you've shared with us, what your concerns are. They do not have it on an agenda. They will not, actually, they won't put it on an agenda until they have some answers to this latest DEP report. So check out the DEP reports and do your own research if you feel inclined. But I would say my first step was to reach out to Sue and ask questions and to the council. And I think they'll want to hear from you and get at it early.
And voice your concern that you want it to stop. You don't want to have to go through months and months and months of dog and pony shows.
Right.
Make our efforts.
The longer something like this goes, the more serious it becomes.
Right.
It is.
Understand how things work. The higher you go, the more complicated it does, and you get other people's interests. If Bucksport can keep it at its level right now, you have an opportunity. You do not want it to go to a state level. All the names of the councilors are right here in their phone numbers, except for Mr. Bishop's, who will be inaugurated this Thursday. You may go to the, note, while it's not on the agenda this Thursday, there is a public forum Thursday. There is also going to be a manager's report where she will talk about this. There is no written proposal. There doesn't need to be one. We need to say, please stop it now. Why do we need to go through this? This is not a, the thing that will stop this for sure is if the townspeople say no.
Right.
So we need the voice in mass and say, no, this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. And it doesn't need to go on and on and on, because AIM, you know, will change the proposal, offer more money, and they will have a meeting with council. What's it gonna take? Those kind of things happen, by the way. I've seen them happen. Don't let it happen.
That's right. You have to look at their track record right now. Not properly monitored, not properly inspected. It's a mess, and they violated the permit.
Yeah.
Here, why don't you take it over?
So okay, in the back,
Do we need a petition to sign?
Citizens can do that, of course.
in the back, sir.
I'm Judd S. Kendall. I'm not actually a resident of Bucksport, but I spend a lot of time on John Long Road. It's a lovely spot. I'm absolutely in agreement with the idea of contacting town council.
Thank you.
Now,
This needs to stop
It does.
at the council level.
firm and unyielding is what your opinion is. But I would also say, and I don't know the mechanism for doing this, go on the offensive against AIM with what they've got happening there. That's the key to this, okay? They're out of compliance. Somebody's got to take
Right.
some responsibility for that and put them on the defensive so they're not doing what Don was talking about, which is, oh, you didn't like this proposal, well, let's tweak it a little bit, let's,
Right.
what we can do, give you a little more money. Go on the offensive.
So there were two things that were said tonight. One is the AIM issue, and the one that Hans mentioned is we've already got a mess, and how are we going to deal with it? Right, Don? Right, Hans?
Right.
And, it's not monitored. So I think there are a couple of things we need to deal with the council. Frankly, my thought is that why do we need all these reports? We already know what we don't want. All we have to do is take action. Don, if you will provide to Johanna all the names of the council, we will publish them. You can call our office, 469-3333. We'll give you the information if you can't get it somewhere else. This is going to be sent to the town and their website, and we'll provide whatever information. Okay, someone in the back.
I just want to say I'm very grateful for this opportunity, especially calling
There are a couple of things in terms of my education on this issue, is that AIM is already a bad neighbor. They have violated their permits. I would like to get that information because I do want to review that myself before I meet with Susan Lassard and before I meet with the town councilors individually. I think everybody in this room needs to have a sit down with each of those folks, but go in prepared and to know your facts. Because you can say no. And I agree, this is a bad proposal. Bucksport has spent, the other thing I'd like to know, and I don't know this figure, Bucksport has spent a lot of money on economic development planning.
Right.
How they want the Main Street to look, the curves, the what. Dorothy Lake crossed the street in front of the Nicholson building and got hit by a car and died on Main Street. We organized against a cogeneration, coal-fired cogen plant that would have fed power to the mill, which is now gone. Okay?
Right.
So, Bucksport has made, Bucksport is on the cusp of being the jewel in this region now.
Right.
And I am proud to live in Bucksport. And I'm an out-of-stater, but a lot of you who know me don't hold that against me, thank goodness.
Right.
And, Doug and I, we live on the River Road, we know all of you, we've organized, we've raised money, we've prepared the way with our neighbors to say this is the kind of community we want to live in. And I think that's what we need to be very clear about. What kind of community do we want? My nephew, who is one of the few, I have a big family. My niece Maggie is married to Derek. They are in Bucksport. They've chosen to stay put
Right.
in Bucksport and raise their children. And I'm grateful for that because I get to see those kids. I get to be a part of their life. We get to have fun. We get to be involved in the community. And we need to attract young, vibrant, diverse people to our community. We need to be a welcoming community. We need to be a clean community because once our water resource is gone, it's
Right.
gone. And I think we all know that. We've discussed it. When the pollution, when it's polluted, the mitigation is, secondary. It's gone. And so, Holly said that. I mean, this is just very basic for me. It's basic, vital. It's life. It's life. It's how we want to live. So, and everybody has said that eloquently, so I don't need to beat the dead horse because I think there's a lot of agreement in this room that this is not a good proposal. But I do think we need to keep showing up. We need to keep meeting. We need to be educating ourselves, and we build momentum by doing that. We need to have more meetings. We don't wait for the town council to meet and have this on the docket official. We go to the meetings, we show up, we listen, we learn. We continue to have, I think, regular public meetings.
Right.
Like this. We have this beautiful hall that's accessible to our community, and we keep building momentum. The document that I have not read, which I plan to, that should be mailed to everybody in Bucksport. That should go into the enterprise, into the Bangor Daily. I don't know how we're going to fund all that, but we need to really understand what this proposal is, and we need to keep saying the same message to the council ahead of things. Because and I have a question, one other thing, and then I'm going to sit down. Susan Lassard is chair of the DEP in the state of Maine. Is that not a conflict of interest? Now, we have some attorneys here. But for me, as a professional person, if I have my hand in somebody's business, if I see that as a primary conflict of interest.
Right.
I don't know the legalities around that. I have not researched that, and I want to know more about that. She should be, she's our town manager, and she's the chair of the DEP. So I don't know how that works, but to me, that's the slippery slope as well. So there's just a lot to this, but I really appreciate the forum tonight, and thank you for all the good work. Bill, thank you for your editorials. We have to do it all. We have to keep it going.
I've got one more comment, and then we'll close.
This is more of a to-do, all right? because we don't know a whole hell of a lot about age. One thing I've heard is, I was in southern Maine, there was a huge scrap pile of metal on the town pier. They eliminated that, and I think that was age. They wanted to have a scrap pile here, a scrap metal thing at one point. I don't know if that's still a proposal. But what do we know about this corporation? They're not new. They have a history. And if somebody has the ability to research some things about age, we can, like somebody said, be proactive. We can go after that.
There's a few, they're a company out of Montreal.
Okay.
I
thought they're out of St. John of Brunswick.
Right now, look up, the guy is, I forgot his last name, Black, the owner, CEO, billionaire.
Yeah.
Out of Montreal, and just look up A recycling, and, you know, there's a lot of workplace challenges, things like that.
What's their history in different places?
Yeah.
Do we know that?
It's not good.
Right.
I think you could find different, if you type it in. So a lot of the articles are in French, but, Google Translate. But I don't know enough.
It would be my intention to have more forums here in Brown Hall where we can discuss whatever aim or whatever. So,
I don't
Excuse
know
me.
enough about
I think that would all be good, but if we're all gonna, go to town meetings and talk to these people and stuff like that, it'd be handy if we had all the information and we're speaking the same language and speaking like we knew what we were talking about.
Right.
So if there was a way to draft all this together so that we could have it as armed citizenry, so to speak,
right.
that would be very good.
This is a beginning, but there's more to come. We have refreshments next over the table. Thank you to our guests, please, folks. They have done